Well, this is one of my favorite times of the year. It really is. Baseball season is in full bloom. And even though Bally Sports does not allow me to watch it, I still follow as best as I can. If you're a Tigers fan, good luck to you. Hope springs eternal. But not only that, we just finished with the Final Four, just wrapped up the Masters. The golf tournament was the week after. The NBA playoffs are they're full bloom. The NHL play. I mean, all this is the season really to be a sports fan. It's sports heaven in these next few months. I remember as a kid growing up spending time listening on the radio, AM radio, listening to the Tiger games. It would be, or watching the baseball, whether it's watching or listening. Ernie Harwell, Al Kaline, remember those days who were covering the Tigers, and George Kell, all of those guys. That's been part of my formation in terms of baseball. As a kid, sports is fun. Sports is fun. Join Carrie and I sometime watching a game. Come to our house and watch a game with Carrie and I. I promise you it's going to be total fun, but you got to bring your earplugs. All right? That's all I'm saying. Right? Yes, she's shaking her head. Yes, just bring your earplugs. But if I took out a piece of paper and wrote down the Super Bowl, World Series, NBA championship, Final Four, Stanley. If I took out a piece of paper and began to write down who the winners were from all those championship teams from the past years and beyond, I have to admit I would have a hard time remembering who won the Stanley Cup 3 years ago. I would even struggle to tell you who, without Googling it, who was the Super Bowl winner from 5 years ago, right? All those things that happened, but it just seems like if you ask me today what happened then, I'm going to have a hard time remembering who the winners are, especially the Super Bowl, unless you're a Lions fan. We're not even on the list, so we're okay. We're okay there. Not yet. We're not yet on that list. I'm hopeful. I'm certain the Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year, right? And the only reason why I'm certain I know the Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year, or this last January, is because I know who wasn't in that game, but should have been in that game. That's probably the only reason why I know the Chiefs were in it, because there was another team that should have been. And I remember that Texas won the World Series last year, but really the only reason why I know that Texas won the World Series last year is because they beat the Astros. And I hate the Astros. So I remember that because they're a bunch of cheaters. All right, I'm just saying, Google it. Google it. It'll tell you, right? They're cheaters, right? But if you ask me to go farther back, like I said, I might struggle a little bit. For as important as those moments were in that time, and as much as I've been watching, and I don't know why, I just am, why I've been watching some of these NBA playoffs, and we turn it off after a while, but for as much as I've been watching all of that, I begin to realize, looking back, this is going to fade away as well. Maybe even next year, I won't even begin to remember who was playing. That doesn't mean I have a bad memory. It's just that things kind of continue to rotate and move on. You begin to realize that things do move away quickly, and things do kind of go away quickly as well. And in some ways, this is what the writer of the book of Ecclesiastes is concerned with. Let me start here. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. Jordan reminded me that this is pretty much, I'm going to read the whole chapter except for the last verse, but it's not very long. I'm going to start with verse 1. Ecclesiastes, this is where our journey is going to begin. The words of the teacher of the assembly, David's son, king in Jerusalem. Perfectly pointless, says the teacher. Perfectly pointless. Everything is pointless. That's a good start, right? It's a good start. What do people gain from all the hard work that they work so hard at under the sun? A generation goes, a generation comes, but the earth remains as it always has. The sun rises, the sun sets, it returns, panting to the place where it dawns. The wind blows to the south, goes around to the north, around and round the wind returns to its rounds again. All the streams flow to the sea, but the sea is never full. To the place where the rivers flow, There they continue to flow. All words are tiring. No one is able to speak. The eye isn't satisfied with seeing. Neither is the ear filled up by hearing. And whatever has happened, that's what will happen again. Whatever has occurred, that's what will occur again. There is nothing new under the sun. People may say something, look at this, it's new, but it was already around for ages before us. There's no remembrance of the things in the past, nor of the things to come in the future. Neither will there be any remembrance among those who come along in the future. I am the teacher. I was king over Israel in Jerusalem. I applied my mind to investigate and to explore by wisdom all that happens under heaven. It's an unhappy obsession that God has given to human beings. When I observed all that happens under the sun, I realized that everything is pointless. It's a chasing after the wind. What's crooked can't be straightened. What isn't there can't be counted. I said to myself, look here, I have grown much wiser than any who ruled over Jerusalem before me. My mind has absorbed great wisdom and knowledge. But when I set my mind to understand wisdom and also to understand madness and folly, I realized that this too was a chasing after the wind. That's kind of depressive language, honestly, right? The book of Ecclesiastes, it's an interesting book. It's part of the wisdom tradition. And even though at the beginning of the book, in verse 1, with the name Solomon, David's son, thrown in there, there really is, if you read it right, there's a second narrator giving us the words of the teacher. And in this case, the teacher Solomon, it reads like this. The words of the teacher. So someone else is interpreting the words of the teacher, who most likely is Solomon. And at the end of the book of Ecclesiastes, which eventually we'll get there, the narrator gives a little bit of an assessment. We love that word, assessment. Don't we? Yes, yes. He doesn't, she does. All right, it's a teacher word, right? Of what the teacher has been talking about. Now, scholars aren't sure, but their best guess is probably the book of Ecclesiastes was not written by Solomon, but it probably arrived 600 or 700 years after Solomon had lived. But there were writings, there were thoughts that a narrator came and put them to words. Somebody, somewhere, a sage, a wise person, a smart person, maybe even during the time of Ezra or Nehemiah, those prophets, where the walls were up and the city was crumbling, the writer begins to reflect after exile about all that has happened based on the kinds of thoughts that Solomon had. In some ways, the narrator, the writer, brings back to their imagination to the people. For King Solomon, he gives them a little, after seeing all of this, let's say 600, 700 years later, getting a perspective of all that once was and took place. Solomon, who, if you remember, was the keeper of wisdom, smartest man in the world. Lord told Solomon, I'll give you anything in the world you want. What do you want? Solomon said, I want to have wisdom. I want to know. And God gave it to him. Right? Solomon was the one who built the original temple. And he established peace for a long time. Solomon did. We've talked about him a little bit. Yet, as we know, it eroded away those good times, leading to the conquest of the northern nation and the southern nation, and it led them into exile after Solomon had ruled. But then after that, as you know, they do return back to Jerusalem. The exiles are allowed to go free, and they come back. And when they get back, they begin to rebuild the wall. They begin to rebuild the temple. And when they get back, everyone is so optimistic about how things are going to go. We're so excited. Exile is over. Now we can redo things. We can create what we once had. If we get back to this point that we were before exile, then maybe our history as a people is going to end right here at the pinnacle once again. We were at the top. We lost everything. We had nothing. God brought us out of that. So how about we just build it again and do it all and recreate everything that was there. And maybe it's going to go better this time. And the writer of Ecclesiastes says, yes, we have this temple. And yes, you have rebuilt the walls, but be careful because another empire is most likely to come along because that is what happens. And yes, you are going to have some good leaders for a while, but there are going to be some bad leaders that you have. You're going to have some bad kings, and they're going to lead you into places that you really didn't want to go. And so the writer puts all of that in perspective, looking back on all that. And here is really his summation. We're going to dig into it just a little bit. He says, there is nothing new under the sun. He said it several times. I didn't bother to count today because he said it over and over again. There's nothing new under the sun. Time comes and time goes. We'll talk about time next week. There are seasons of flourishing and there are seasons of exile. There are seasons of peace. There are seasons of war, seasons of plenty, seasons of famine. It just seems to go in a cycle like that. There is a season for everything, so to speak. And you've heard me say that in many kinds. And this really comes from Ecclesiastes when I say there's a season for everything. But in the midst of all of those changes or seasons, in the midst of all of those seasons, the writer says this, all of that is hevel, hevel, hevel. Now, it's a Hebrew word. It's not in your Bible. It may be down at the bottom somewhere. But it's a Hebrew word, hevel. H-E-V-E-L. Hevel. Now, that word is translated in many ways. We have translated, and the writers did as well, is basically hevel means vanity, right? Vanity is all. Everything is meaningless. It's vanity, vanity, vanity. There is nothing good here. It's all meaningless. That word hevel, it's real heavy. That's where the word heavy comes from. Hevel. It's burdensome. The Common English Version, as we read today, says it like this. Everything is perfectly pointless. I love that. Perfectly pointless. Right? Sounds like Mary Poppins. Right? Everything's perfectly pointless. Maybe we should get up and get into song and dance, right? Right? It's perfectly pointless. But the writer says, and he ends it this way, that it is like chasing after the wind. That this is the way of life for the writer. It's like chasing after the wind. This is the way time is for the writer, chasing after the wind. If we see it, we want to grasp it, but as soon as we get a hold of it, as soon as we grasp it, it gets away from us. And before we know it, it's gone. How did that go away so quickly? I know you're tracking me here on this. I had it and it's gone. What happened? It's gone. And it's not really so much as it's meaningless, I think, as the writer would say. It's just about, it's more than it being meaningless. It's this. It's something you just can't seem to grab a hold of and hold on to. For as soon as you think you've contained it, it slips out of your fingers and a new time comes in. It slips out of your fingers and a new season begins. Here's my problem, and I was kind of talking with Carrie yesterday. But here's my problem. I'm old. Well, not that old, but I'm old. I get old, right? And the older I get, the younger that people come along who know stuff that I don't know. Do you know how frustrating that is? At my age, to realize that I have a daughter-in-law, right, who knows something that I don't know. Now, it's no offense to our daughter-in-law. It's just the fact that somebody 20 years younger than me now knows something I don't know. Do you know how frustrating that can be? I know you know that, right? Just when I feel like I got a hold of it, some young whippersnapper brings in something new, and now I got to start all over again, right? New seasons, new times. As soon as I grasp onto it, poof, it's gone. And so when I talk to people like, not necessarily my daughter-in-law, because she gave great advice, by the way, But most of the time when I'm talking to students or whatever, now I just kind of shake my head and nod and go, yeah, I know that. Yeah. Oh, sure, right. Yeah. You've been in those conversations. I know. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good. Yep, yep, yep. Wait, what is that book again? Oh, yeah, right. You just start agreeing because you have no. You're shaking, you're smiling. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's that kind of feeling of unendedness. Feels like that we're never going to be able to grasp something because as soon as we do, something else comes. We grab onto that new thing, and soon enough, it's gone. The writer, as we've read, also talks about this in business as well. Business can be kind of frustrating, can it? Right? Like you get a job with a great company, and you've given so much of your time to this company. You've given so much of your life, time, so much of your life and your energy, and you've given your creativity to this company. And you help the company grow, you help the business grow, or whatever it is that you're doing, and you help it thrive. And maybe you make something new while you're doing it, and something good happens, and you're a creator of something. But then somebody else who comes along, he's going to make something even a little bit newer than the new thing that you just created. And you just kind of get tired of it all. And so you retire. I'm done. Get a gold watch. And somebody's going to take your office. Someone's going to slip into your cube where you're at. Or the business goes broke because you left. Now, if that happened, you're probably going to secretly cheer. Yeah, look what happened. You know, I mean, politics is a good example of this as well. Because just about the time we get one candidate elected, the news media, I shouldn't say the news, they take too much blame, but then as soon as we get somebody elected, the media almost immediately starts talking about what? The next election, right? We elect someone and they're automatically talking about the next, right? I mean, we just got done with an election. Can we just chill out for a minute? Can we just relax for a minute before moving on to something else? There's always a competition, especially in politics. There's always an election. There's always challenges where we solve one injustice here in the world only to have five others pop up other here. We solve one and then more of them just we create peace in one area of the world only to have war start someplace else. We work so hard in our lives to make the community better, only to discover that we're finding the same sins and brokenness pop up in other kinds of places in our community. Sometimes those problems and those issues are even worse than they were before. Let me just say what the writer of Ecclesiastes would say about this? It's all vanity. It's meaningless. Based on what we just talked about, it's pointless. Because what is there? And as depressing as this passage can be, honestly, I was thinking about this week, as depressing as this can seem to be, right? Ecclesiastes is important to this 55-year-old soul, soon to be 56. Especially for somebody like me, who deep inside have this deep desire to be and feel significant in doing something. It feels like, honestly, much of my life, in many ways, has been devoted to chasing after significance in my own life and trying to be significant in God's kingdom in some way. Now, that's just me, but I've spent a lot of my time trying to find significance. And I've crossed a lot of barriers, and I've come across people close to me and family, far away in family, all those kinds of things that as you search for meaning, sometimes it's the people around you that pursue you to seek it even more. But this is a 55 years old, and I'm in many ways spent much of my life trying to find significance in it. Maybe that's you too. But then the book of Ecclesiastes comes along and says something to me. He says, Lonnie, relax. Will you? Just relax. There's a season here. Stop grasping so hard at that stuff because Lonnie is going to go away. I've known, I've seen. It's like chasing after the wind. Relax a little bit. Advent and Christmas are going to be here soon. Woohoo! I shouldn't say that because we're just getting into summer, right? And we're going to work hard. We're going to work hard to make that a great season for us. We're going to work hard to make that a great season for the church. And then after Advent and Christmas, we're going to look forward to Lent. And Easter will be upon us again. Then pretty soon after that, it's going to be summer. And then fall is going to arrive. And then it'll be what? Another Advent. And another Christmas. And then we'll do Lent again. And maybe during that time, I will officiate a wedding or two. Anybody in here? Yeah. I never know. Yeah. Perhaps I'm going to get a chance to baptize a few folks. And I think that's going to hold true. And there will be those people we encounter who have great things happen in their life as God brings transformation to them. Some good things are going to happen during that time. But then there are also going to be some people who are probably going to walk away from their faith in those cycles of years. And someday my hair hopefully is not going to fall out, but probably one of these days my hair is going to fall out. It's going to forget the white, we're going to go, right? And someday somebody's going to move into my office and mess this whole thing up. Maybe. So what do we do with this vanity, with everything is meaningless? I mean, do we just kind of live life with the fact that we are vapor and we are merely mist and that we can never be able to grab a hold of it and grasp it? Wow, that's depressing stuff. It is. Now, the good news out of this passage today is that the writer of Ecclesiastes, I'll say this clearly, really is not the kind of person, you got to read it carefully, he is not the kind of person who believes that nothing really matters. The book of Ecclesiastes is rather very optimistic. Because maybe the writer is saying, here's the optimism here, maybe we should just enjoy this moment where you're at, in this time, and in this place. And in these relationships that God has given to you and I. Enjoy these moments with your children. They will quickly fade away. Enjoy these moments with your spouse. Enjoy them. Embrace them. Enjoy these moments while you're in school. I know you cringe at it, but you will look back and you'll say one of two things. I should have done better because I didn't do very well, or I should have just made some changes there. Embrace the moments that you are living in, these relationships that God has given to you. Growing up, one of the most popular plays when I was growing up in high schools, and I don't know if they still perform them very much anymore. Some of these smaller, intimate kinds of high school groups do. But they, and you may be familiar with this play, but Our Town growing up used to be a very popular play done in high schools. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Our Town, with this play. You may not be, by Thornton Wilder, right? It's a story about George Gibbs, who falls in love with a young woman named Emily. Sorry, that's just the way it goes, right? But he falls in love with Emily, and they end up getting married. But Emily dies in childbirth in the play. And it's really a fascinating play if you've never seen it. There's not a lot of set decorations in Our Town. I mean, it's truly 2 ladders and a few chairs around on the set. And in the imagination of the play, after the death of Emily, in the imagination of the play, Emily goes up the hill to where all the people in town are buried. She moves her soul, so to speak, to that cemetery area where all those other folks are, right? And several of her ancestors are there, and she sees them, and they sit in this place, and they sit in this place of death, the cemetery, and they kind of talk to each other, right? And Emily, as she's talking to her ancestors, because she's passed away, she's in the cemetery area, Emily decides she wants to go back. She asks if she can go back to Our Town. She asks if she can go back to Our Town and just kind of live one more day there. And they say to her there at that area, you can do that, but you really don't want to, Emily. You don't want to. And the girl goes, oh, I know. Yes, I know. I do. I really want to take a step back in for a day. So she decides to go back and live her 12th birthday. But when she goes back to relive her 12th birthday in the play, it's really a very painful experience. And not because she can't fully go back, but because when she goes back, it dawns on her that the people on earth, those humans who are, it dawns on her that she really wasn't paying attention to what was going on when she was alive. And even in that moment, she tries to tell the people around her who are living, and of course she's not alive, but she attempts to try and tell people to pay close attention to what's happening in your world. Don't miss this. And Emily says, I can't bear it. Everyone, they're so young as she's watching this and beautiful. Why do they ever have to get old? Mama, I'm here, she cries to her mom. I'm grown up now. I love you all. I can't look at everything hard enough. Mama, just one last minute so that I know that you really saw me. Mama, 14 years have gone by. She's trying to speak to her mom. You're passed away. I'm dead. But you're a grandmother. Mama, enjoy that. I married George Gibbs. Mom, don't forget. Mama, Wally is gone too. His appendix burst on the way to North Conway. We just feel terrible. Do you remember? Don't you remember, Mom? Don't you remember? I know we don't have time to look at one another, and it goes fast. And I didn't realize that while I was there, in those years that I was there, I didn't realize that life was going on. I never noticed the life that was going on right beside me. Oh, I don't want to be here. Take me back. Take me back to the grave. Goodbye, world. Goodbye. Goodbye, Grover's Corner. Goodbye. The clock's ticking and Mama's sunflowers and flood and food and coffee. Goodbye to all of that. And then she says to the narrator of the story in the play, the stage manager, she says this. And here's the point. Do any human beings ever realize life while they are living it? Do any human beings realize life while they are living it? And the stage manager replies, no. No, they don't. That play would be what I would call heavy. It's a great play, but it's heavy. It's vanity. It's hard to grasp. And all we can do is ask God to help us do our best to love one another in this moment, in this time, and to live in gratitude. The writer of the book of Ecclesiastes wants to say that maybe the best thing we can do in this moment is to, yes, simply have a potluck, eat or drink, to be grateful that God has given us another day. To be grateful that God has given us another day to live into. And he's given us time to do it. Now, I don't think that the writer of Ecclesiastes is saying that God is controlling everything. I don't think that. I don't think that we're just living out some kind of preset script from God. But I do believe that the writer of Ecclesiastes is saying that we are given these moments in the hope that God, in his own way, can weave something together in our lives that is both beautiful and meaningful. And even though they seem to pass through our hands quickly, they are still held in the hands and the heart of God. We're going to have high moments. We're going to have some low moments. Empires will come. Seasons will pass. New churches will rise up while others fade away. The writer of Ecclesiastes wants to say this. Will anybody remember any of that? And yet, somehow, Our hope is that our hope is that we offer these moments that we're sure we offer them up to God, that somehow God is taking the whispers and the breaths of our lives and is somehow bringing about his purposes. And maybe, just maybe, it'll allow us to take a deep breath and enjoy God in the moment, in the relationships he has given to us. The writer says over and over again, there is nothing new under the sun. And he's right. And I think we can agree with that. But here's my point. If you don't hear anything else this morning, I want you to hear this. So, if there is nothing but nothing under the sun, our only hope must be above it. You see that? If there's nothing but nothing under the sun, then our hope must be above it. If there is nothing but nothing under the sun, our hope must be beyond it. Not just above, but beyond it. And secondly, from the writer's perspective, if a man who had investigated everything that was visible, then the one thing needed, perhaps, is invisible. You see that? If the writer's been searching and he's been doing his work and homework and he's been seeing all of this and everything that he can actually see, it's just meaningless, then perhaps the writer wants us to say what we need is to look into the invisible, into what is not there. Something we can't believe in our hearts without hope. I, let me just I don't know if you're wondering why I haven't drinking from this, but we see this glass here, right? Glass of water. Now, an optimist sees what? It's half full. An optimist sees this glass of water as half full. Yes. Optimists are leaders, by the way, just in case you didn't know that. A pessimist will see that it's what? It's half empty. It's only half empty. So the optimist says the glass is half full. The pessimist says it's half empty. But do you want to know what the scientist will say about this? The scientist will say it's completely full. You see the solid, but you can't see the gases that are there filling that as well. I think that's what the writer of Ecclesiastes wants us to see. He wants us to have hope and believe in what is not there, which is the Spirit and the breath of God filling up the rest of it. We have this tendency to hold on to what we can see. The writer of Ecclesiastes wants us to hold on to what we cannot see, that is above the sun, that may not be visible to the naked eye, but invisible, but visible in our spirit. Solomon had everything. He explored all of the visible, possible ways of stimulation, yet found no satisfaction. So it seems only logical that the satisfaction Solomon searched for will only come from that which he cannot see. So yes, work hard, but know that what we offer to God really does matter. Matters because we are living into the story of the invisible God that we cannot see, but have a hope to know that he is filling our glass to overflowing.